How about now? Huh? Not yet? It's gotta be. Yes, yes, yes. Okay. Sorry. Sorry, everybody. I found the problem. Can everybody hear me now? Okay, I'm back. I'm back. I'm back. Bonnie tells me she can hear me. Kay says, better for me, Joe. Can hear, but there's an echo. That I think I can fix. How about now? Is there an echo now? I'm fine, Rob. How are you? Yes, we can hear. Is there an echo? Yes, we can hear. Yay, yes. Huh? Echo now? Okay. How about now? Sounds like you're in a cavern, but there's audio. Tell me, Bonnie, is there an echo? Louder, Bonnie. And Rob says, I'm beyond fucking pissed. I hope you're not beyond fucking pissed at me, Rob. Dale says, yes, there is an echo. Well, okay, I gotta find the source of the echo. Yeah, Bonnie says turn the sound down. She says she can't turn the sound down. Well, how's it sound now? Is there still an echo? There should be an echo. How about that? A stadium echo. Why the hell is there a stadium echo? What the hell do I have on here? It would produce an echo. Okay, please, do I still have an echo? Okay, Bonnie says it's better. Sandy says it's not bad. Steve Day says put Bonnie on. Well, she's in the living room and she's telling me whether there's an echo or not. Okay, how's the sound now? Is it better yet? No more echo, Rob says. Oh, great. Sounds fine, Evelina says. Great. Carol Coutinho says a tiny one. Hi, Carol. Hi, Evelina. Hi, everybody. A few of you still have an echo. Sandy says now it's good. Okay, I think I'm going to go ahead because time's a wasting here. We got a lot to go through. Okay, this was, of course, a day of frustration and a day, okay, of waiting, and altogether a day of how the hell are they screwing it up now? Of course, I'm talking about the Democratic Party, okay, of Iowa, the same people who stole the caucus away from Bernie in 2016 were doing their best again. An article appeared in Common Dreams, quote, not a good night for democracy, unquote. And Sanders releases more internal results, hinting at Iowa victory, but laments caucus chaos. And that article was written by Julia Conley. I'm just going to pick up a few points from it. So Bernie, of course, tried to defend himself during the day by releasing further results. He released um, some results based on 40% of the precincts last night, okay, based on his own app for polling the precinct captains, or at least for getting the results of the precincts all across the state. Uh, he then released results from 60% of the precinct captains from across the state. And according to the Sanders campaign, he had then a comfortable lead, apparently. And according to Jeff Weaver, announced on a plane they were on, Sanders had 29.08% at that point after the first alignment, and Buttigieg had 21.63% after the first alignment, and Warren 19.51% after the first alignment, and Amy Klobuchar 12.27%, and Joe Biden had only 12.04%, so at that point he was in fifth place. After the second and final alignment, the figures were Bernie 29.4, Buttigieg 24.87. So Buttigieg had picked up some, and Warren was at 20.65%. So Warren picked up some also. But now Biden was in fourth place, having moved to 12.92%, having picked up a bit. And Amy Klobuchar went down, okay, to 11.18% after the second and final alignment. The Sanders campaign thought that these results were actually pretty reliable, but of course, they were only representative of 60% of the vote. Now, since then, Bernie has not released any further results that I am aware of. That was earlier today. I think these results were released in the early afternoon, if I'm not mistaken. But now moving on, after the disasters happened, there were a lot of calls for the resignation of the DNC chairman, Tom Perez, because not only had there been this disaster in Iowa, but also the changing of the rules to let the billionaire oligarch, Mr. Michael Bloomberg, into the debates, at least to give him a chance to get into the debates. And people then called for the resignation of Tom Perez. But at least initially, he was not going anywhere. There's a petition that had over 13,600 signatures at press time. This article calling for the resignation, of Perez was written by Owen Higgins. It was also Common Dreams article. And it points out that while Perez and the DNC were not technically in charge of the process on Monday night, the National Party's influence on the process likely led to the meltdown of the caucus. And it explains that after the concerns about the supposed interference of Russia in the 2016 elections, a cottage industry of technology security experts offering protective services for elections was created. And on Monday, Iowa used an app created by the Democratic Party connected tech company Shadow. And while before they used the app, their use of the app was questioned by observers, saying there was sure to be chaos. Turns out those observers were right, and people encountered a lot of problems in using the Shadow app. And of course, there was a lot of secrecy around the app and the developer of the app, Shadow. And the process by which it failed have sown distrust in the primary process among the rank and file. A very true statement by Higgins. And the anger at Perez had been brewing for days, as explained earlier, because of the Bloomberg situation. And Sean King called for the resignation of he called for the resignation, of Perez also. And he pointed out that after a clusterfuck in a state, the DNC had a year to prepare for, that was preceded by the DNC changing the rules for a billionaire to buy his way into the race. He pointed out that the man, that is to say Mr. Perez, has lost the respect of millions. Certainly another true statement. And then there are more quotes of people who want to see the resignation, of Perez, and a senior staff writer from Vice. Laura Wagner tweeted, "The lesson is that the party will stymie Bernie's chances one way or another, and the Vermont senator's supporters would need to accept the need to fight on a number of fronts to succeed." And of course, that was true. But Bernie was also ready, because he developed an app of his own, or his people did, and that app was the one that was counting the results that was reported by the precinct captains across the state. Bernie also detailed 5 lawyers to begin to talk to the state party and to go into the legal aspects of what was happening to him with them. So Bernie was signaling that he was prepared to fight. And most probably he's going to fight. Here's some background on Shadow. The app, this is an article by Jake Johnson. After epic nightmare, in Iowa, quote, I don't see where the unquote is. Oh, right. I'm sorry. It's right after nightmare in Iowa. Democratic app built by the secretive firm Shadow Inc. comes under scrutiny. Sounds like a spy outfit, right? Shadow Inc. So the app, according to several news reports, was developed by the secretive for-profit tech firm Shadow Inc., which has ties to and receives funding from Acronym, a Democratic, a digital nonprofit organization. Shadow's CEO is Gerald Nemira, who worked on Hillary Clinton's 2016 presidential campaign. And someone very closely with the app at Shadow is a woman by the name of Tara McGowan. And but Tara McGowan is married and has a husband who evidently worked as an operative on Hillary Clinton's staff and Barack Obama's staff, and completely in with the Clintons. Okay, an acronym is completely in with the Clintons. Okay, and the Obamas also. And Shadow was tightly tied to them. And the Democratic Party of the state of Iowa decided to let such a company develop their app that they were going to use to count the results in Iowa. What could go wrong? What could go wrong? State campaign finance records indicate the Iowa Democratic Party paid Shadow more than $60,000 for website development over two installments in November and December 2019, just a few months ago. The Democratic source with knowledge of the process so that those payments were for the app that caucus site leaders were supposed to use to upload the rights at their locales. Now, I got some information today that the Buttigieg campaign actually paid for the software rights to this app. And I don't know quite how that sort of ties in, but if that report was true, then the rights to this app are owned by Buttigieg. So what was the state party doing using an app, software app, the rights to which were owned by Buttigieg? I don't know. Now maybe the report that I read was incorrect, okay, or incomplete, okay, and maybe he just paid for the rights to use it, okay, on an unlimited license, and it was still possible for Shadow to license it to other people. I don't know, could have been a situation like that, but who knows? Who knows? Shadow has also been paid for services by the Nevada Democratic Party and the presidential campaigns of former Vice President Joe Biden and former South Bend, Indiana Mayor Pete Buttigieg, according to Federal Election Commission filings. And so the Democratic Party officials kept the details of the app as well as Shadow's involvement hidden from the public ahead of the Iowa caucus. But as Monday night wore on and frustration with the delayed reporting of the caucus results boiled over, journalists began scrutinizing the new technology and its developer more closely. You betcha they did. Always a little too little, always a little too late. It also developed the app, was hastily constructed in just 2 months and not properly tested at a statewide scale, quote unquote. That's a quote from the New York Times, the paper of record. And here's another quote from the Times. The party decided to use the app only after another proposal for reporting votes, which entailed having caucus participants call in their votes over the phone, was abandoned on the advice of DNC officials, the Times reported. The secrecy around the app this year, to quote further, came from the Iowa Democratic Party, which asked that even its name be withheld from the public. That is to say, the name of the app or the name of the company. I'm not sure. Anyway, there were concerns that the app would malfunction in areas with poor net connectivity because of the high bandwidth use, such as when many people tried to use it at the same time, unquote, which of course was the whole point. We wonder if that was a feature or a bug. But Mandy McClure, communications director of the Iowa Democratic Party, said in a statement that the new app was not responsible for the delayed results. In a pig's eye. In a pig's eye, folks. This is simply a reporting issue, said one Mandy McClure. And quoting again, the app did not go down. This is not a hack or an intrusion. The underlying data and paper trail is sound and will simply take time to further report the results, unquote. And it did take time. It took from the end of the caucuses yesterday until 5 o'clock today to make public the first batch of results, going beyond the 2%, which was initially reported actually last night. So it took a while for the second batch, okay, of results to appear. That is close to a full day. So it seems like the new app was responsible. It was responsible because people could not use it. They had not been trained in it. And because it could not take the traffic. Anyway, this article appeared somewhat earlier today. So even though it said results are expected Tuesday, no specific time has been given. Right. After a while, they said, well, it would be 4 p.m., and then they finally said it would be 5 p.m. It did finally come out at 5 p.m. I saw some of the results in the Times at that point. Presidential campaigns of Senator Bernie Sanders and Buttigieg released portions of their internal caucus suggestion they emerged victorious from the bungled process. Acronym spokesperson Kyle Tharp attempted to distance his group from Shadow's technology. He said, Acronym is an investor in several for-profit companies across the progressive, but the okay, across the media and technology sectors, said Tharp. One of those independent for-profit companies is Shadow Inc., which also has other private investors. We are reading confirmed reports of Shadow's work with the Iowa Democratic Party on Twitter, and we, like everyone else, are eagerly awaiting more information from the Iowa Democratic Party with respect to what has happened, unquote. That should be taken with a grain of salt, and the reason why it should be is because I've seen other people say that Acronym is not only an investor in Shadow, but is the owner, okay, of Shadow. I don't know. Based on what was said here, it seems like it's probably not the sole owner, but I think the implication of what I saw that is that it was the majority owner, okay, of Shadow, and that its people are in close contact with Shadow, and that in particular, Tara McGowan, who, as I said, was very closely associated with the app, that she was involved, okay, with Acronym, extremely closely, okay, with Acronym. Okay, apart from that, it should be mentioned that supposedly this app was the brainchild of one Robbie Mook, who you may remember was Hillary Clinton's campaign manager in 2016. And who helped her to botch up the campaign in 2016. So Robbie was back, and this time he was working with Shadow Inc., an Acronym, to develop this app. And of course, it generated what has been variously called by others a shit show and a clusterfuck. So there we go. And next, we have the Democratic Party of the state finally releasing some results. 62% of Iowa caucus results. And this article says that based on 62%, the headline, of Iowa caucus results. Bernie leads the popular vote by 1,200 votes, but trails Buttigieg with but delegates. And this one was written by Owen Higgins today, of course. And Mayor Pete had a 25 delegates. These are not actually delegates, but okay, are delegate equivalents. Okay, eventually those are translated into whole delegate form. In the state of Iowa, I believe there are only something like 47 delegates or 41 delegates, okay, or something like that, okay, to be split up. But it's this larger totals delegates that are mapped to the final delegate counts. So Mr. Buttigieg had a small lead of 25, okay, of the delegate votes, and Bernie had a lead of 1,190 more people votes than Pete had. But when we look at the delegates, 26.9% of the delegate equivalents were awarded to Pete, and 25.1% to Bernie, 18.3% to Warren, and 15.6% to Joe Biden, 12.6% to Klobuchar. So Joe Biden comes in a weak fourth, and Andrew Yang had 1%. 1% of the delegate equivalents, which is probably not enough to get a whole delegate vote there. Now, this is based on 62% of the precincts reporting what apparently are partial results. But frankly, I'm really unclear about this. I've read a number of statements on it. Some say they all say, okay, that the results are partial, but they don't really tell you whether it's also partial within the 62% of the precincts that were actually reporting, okay, or whether the partial adjective is referring to the 62% of the precincts as opposed to 100%, okay, of the precincts. Anyway, there were some sarcastic comments about it, and Intercept editor Glenn Greenwald tweeted, "Since Democrats believe that it's the popular vote that matters, this means Bernie is winning, right?" Of course, Bernie is not winning. The people vote from the state party was tabulated at 28,220 for Bernie and 27,030 for Pete, 22,000 for Warren, 22,254 for Warren, and 14,176 for Joe Biden. So Bernie got almost twice the people vote of Joe Biden. This was from CNN. We hit a stumbling block in the back end of the reporting of the data, said Iowa Democratic Party Chair, IDP Chair, Troy Price, in a brief press conference before the numbers were released. Quote, "But I want you to know the data is accurate," unquote. Well, it may be entirely accurate, but it may be incomplete, both within the precincts and also in the fact that still 38% of the precincts had to report. Price took questions from the audience, including one man who asked, quote, "How can we trust you now?" Unquote. Uh, the article goes on to talk about the irregularities on Monday. And of course, the Sanders campaign again reported entirely different numbers when it came to the popular vote, far different from the popular vote here. So, of course, we have to see what caused these particular differences, and that's not clear yet. That still has to be worked out. According to ABC politics reporter Kendall Carson, the DNC may be about to step in. Now, that's really going to help the situation with respect to trust, right? Quote, one Democratic official I spoke to is being told that the DNC is taking over the accounting of the results. The official said that to their knowledge, this has never happened before, unquote. So, has it never happened before in Iowa, or never happened before in any state? Or just what the hell is happening with the DNC taking over the accounting of results? And why should we why should we trust their accounting of results more than the Iowa State Party? Now, of course, there were cries of anguish, from Tom about this. He said, "This will never happen again," Tom Paris said. "This will never happen again. We have to see to it that this never happens again." And what he seemed to be threatening is that this is the last caucus we're going to see in Iowa. No more caucuses. Of course, after the damage is done and Sanders is deprived of a clean victory and the possible media bump that would come from that particular victory. So, of course, the damage has already been done, and it's really particularly damaging for the people who went to Iowa and were working so hard, so hard in order to get a victory for Bernie Sanders. Uh, so, where do things go from here, and where are things now? Over the last hour, I may have missed some new things which are happening, okay, or about to happen. Maybe the state party has released some further votes, or maybe Bernie, sly that he is, was lying back a little with the 60% of the precincts, and maybe he's just about to release his own figures now for 80% of the precincts, just to go one up on the state party and tell them what his people found when they counted the raw data at the Iowa precincts. Before I get into that, though, I would like to point out, and before I go on to this next article, okay, I'd like to point out there is some controversy over coin tosses. Over coin tosses again to award some delegates to people where the vote totals are very close in some of the precincts. There have evidently been 3 coin tosses in this particular Iowa caucus. And according to what I've heard, and this may be loose at this point, I wouldn't swear to this, but according to what I've heard, all 3 of those coin tosses were won by Mayor Buttigieg, or were lost by Bernie Sanders. So that's a string. If we count 2016, that's a string of 9 straight coin tosses that were implemented by the Iowa State Party that Bernie has lost in Iowa contests. What are the odds that he would lose 9 straight coin tosses. Now, they were astronomical enough during the Clinton Sanders campaign where 6 straight coin tosses were lost. But now, a total of 9 straight coin tosses lost? I think there's something wrong with Iowa coins. They must not be true U.S. coins. They must have an establishment bias. Anyway, the Convo Couch and Fiorella and Tina Berg, who were on the ground in Precinct 8, I believe, if I recall correctly, they were detailing some of the shenanigans there, and there were shenanigans, including sending 100 people home before they wound up the caucus business. That was very shady, and that was one of the places where they had a questionable coin toss, I guess, as well. Anyway, so we don't know how things are going to work out, and there are likely to be dramatic events in Iowa still coming down the pike, but of course, now the attention of the nation has been shifted elsewhere. It's been shifted to the completion of the impeachment proceedings, which were botched by the Democrats, of course. The level of incompetence in that party is simply staggering. It's, of course, because the party has become totally elitist. Everything is top down. So you get the top down stuff and you get incompetence up at the top because people have been up at the top for far too long. And all they know about is authority and playing games and working their will. They have no idea how to be competent. But that's another issue. But while the attention of people is diverted to the impeachment proceedings and to the State of the Union tonight, and God knows what kind of crazy show Trump actually put up for the State of the Union, because this live stream has been competing with him. I figured people would much rather have the discussion here, the conversation here, and hear from me here than hear from Donald Trump. Because, of course, in many cases, Donald Trump just makes people sick, especially our people. But anyway, another one from Common Dreams. The latest polls shows Sanders with, quote, commanding lead, unquote, as Democratic hopefuls head to New Hampshire. And this gets into details of the latest poll in New Hampshire. This one was written by Jessica Corbett. And this is a report on the Emerson College polling survey, the latest one out of New Hampshire. 7 News / Emerson College polling survey of New Hampshire Democratic voters from actually Monday night, which is caucus night. They released it. It's a tracking poll. It showed Sanders at 32% support, followed by Warren at 13% and Biden at 13% and Klobuchar at 12%. And what do you know? Buttigieg is only at 12% in this particular poll. Now, this poll is one of a series of tracking polls that will be appearing every few days now as we approach the New Hampshire primary, which was actually, I think it's next Monday. It's supposed to be February 10th or something like that. The 10th or the 11th. So, this bar chart also gives the results. You can see Andrew Yang has 5%. Tom Steyer has 5%. Tulsi Gabbard has 4% in New Hampshire. So these folks could do a little better than they have been doing. All the other types are in a single category and are 4%. Okay, the top five, though, four of the top five are bunched in the 12 to 13% category. And there's only a single person in the top category, and that's Bernie with 32%. And he that's roughly 2.5 times as much, okay, as anybody else has right now, according to this poll, which is a poll I have a relative degree of trust in. This is the second of a continuous 8-day tracking poll leading up to next week's vote and has a margin of error plus or minus 4.3%. The statement explained Monday night the latest results do represent a shift from Sunday as Bernie gained 3 points. Biden gained, Buttigieg lost 1 point, Warren gained 1 point, and Klobuchar gained 4 points. I think that relative to New Hampshire, most probably Bernie will gain some ground because it looks like he's going to be able to claim that he was the victor in the popular vote, whatever happens with respect to the allocation of the delegates. Also, the results of that are going to be clouded, so the New Hampshire Bernie supporters are likely to want to support him even more strongly in New Hampshire to show a decisive win over the others. A majority of 54% of those polled said the most important factor in selecting a candidate for the nomination is their chance of beating Trump in November. By contrast, 46% intend to select a candidate who closely aligns with their views. It's hard to say what happens to these people when they believe that they're extremely closely aligned with Sanders' views, but think that Sanders has a little less of a chance than somebody else. There's no indication, though, that people would think that the mayor is more likely to be Trump than Bernie is, because all the polling so far shows that Mayor Pete would lose to Trump. Okay, and also shows that the people most likely to beat Trump are Sanders and Joe Biden, but Biden has probably lost some because of his very poor showing in the Iowa caucuses. He is certainly going to lose support in New Hampshire due to that, I think. In fact, I think that Biden is close to finish now. Okay, I guess we just have to see. But I was inclined to say this afternoon that one could stick a fork in him because he was done. So, in New Hampshire, among those under 50, Sanders has 40% support compared with Warren at 15%, Klobuchar at 10%, and Buttigieg at 9%, and Biden at only 7%. And Bernie also does well with the over 50 crowd in New Hampshire. Now that's different because a lot of places he doesn't do so well with the over 50 crowd. But here he leads the field at 23%, followed by Biden at 18%, and Buttigieg and Klobuchar at 15%, and Warren, okay, at 11%. So he leads by less among the over 50 crowd, but he still leads 23 to 18 and 23 to 15, okay, over Buttigieg and Klobuchar. So that's looking good for Bernie there. Looking very good, okay, for Bernie in New Hampshire. Uh, the majority of New Hampshire primary voters say the events of Monday's Iowa caucus will not have an impact on their vote, while 13% say the results of the caucus will impact who they vote for, according to the statement from from 7 News, okay, at Emerson. New Hampshire primary on February 11th will be the nation's second contest. Before we get to February 11th, of course, on February 7th, there's a debate in New Hampshire. So that's where we go next. It looks like Bernie is in line for a very big victory in New Hampshire. I really expect that to happen. I expect the Bernie campaign to redouble with a vengeance and to come back in New Hampshire very strongly, and for Bernie to have a landslide victory there. But of course, we cannot slack off in our support. We have to get in. We have to do whatever we can on the activism front, and whatever we can also on the donations front. And of course, Bernie is going to have tons of events in the state. Okay, and Buttigieg will be fighting very, very hard, because if he stays at this level in New Hampshire, if he stays at the level he's in now, he's done. He doesn't really have anywhere to go then. Okay, it seems to me. Even if he is awarded a majority of the delegates, okay, in Iowa. In the two states of Iowa and New Hampshire, there are only small number of delegates, okay, in each of the states, okay, to the convention. So the delegate numbers, okay, are not important. Okay, and even, okay, if Buttigieg happens to get, okay, a delegate or two more in Iowa, that lead will probably be completely wiped out by the New Hampshire results. But okay, if Buttigieg does poorly in New Hampshire, which is another extremely Caucasian state, he will then be in a very bad situation. He had to do well in both of these states to even be able to persuade people that he could move on back to the Nevada caucuses, and also stay around for South Carolina. By the way, there was one article I forgot to put up here, which I will now do. I thought I put it up there before, but okay, I guess I missed doing it in sequence. That also appeared in Common Dreams, was written by Jake Johnson, and vowing no repeat of Iowa caucus fiasco. The Nevada Dems say they won't use the secretive Shadow Incorporated app. They had it. They paid $58,000 for it. Now they say they're not going to use the app to count. And Bill McCurdy II, the chair of the Nevada State Party, said the NV Dems can confidently say that what happened in the Iowa caucus last night will not happen but in Nevada, on February 22nd. And that came after Bernie Sanders urged the party there to ditch the app, which was developed by Shadow Inc., as you know by now. So $58,000 for technology services out the window then for the Nevada Dems. And let's see if there's anything further here to say. David Sirota, speechwriter for the Sanders campaign, suggested in a tweet Tuesday that, quote, maybe it's not always a great idea to outsource, privatize, and corporatize the most basic services in a democracy, unquote. You bet. You bet. Very wise statement by David Sirota. Okay, so that's the state of play right now. As far as I know it, you may be able to add to what I know. I'm checking in with you in just a second. Please share, like, and subscribe. And please become a patron at www.patreon.com/Joe_Firestone. And I'll be with you in just a second. I want to plug my monitor in so that I can better read your comments. I unplugged it earlier because I thought that might be what was giving me the sound problem. Oh, okay, good. So let me check in with you now. And I'm refreshing my screen because at this point I cannot see myself. I can see myself in my camera and I can see myself in my software app, but I cannot see myself here because my page, my Facebook page, has become a bit unresponsive, shall we say. Anyway, among the problems with its unresponsiveness is that I can't see your comments. So, you'll be patient for a moment. I will keep trying to refresh this page. I'm afraid my computer is a bit taxed right now. I don't know why. I will be right back. Don't go anywhere. Ah, now I have your comments. So, I should be able to start to answer you any second. Rob says FEC filing showed he gave 42,000 to Shadow Inc. Well, the articles I read claimed, okay, I saw the filing as shown, okay, on Nico's program. That did say 42,000, but there must have been a third payment also made because the payment that was reported by other people was 60,000. Evelina says, what went wrong or right, depending on how you look at it, was Bernie developing his own app and calling them out. Yeah, that was wrong from their point of view. Lana said, remember when Pete attended a meeting to stop Bernie a while back? Uh-huh. Sandy Degg said, the app also gave him 200 votes with no names to go with the votes. Wonderful. And Steve Day says, Bernie's has paper redundancy. Not sure what you mean by that, but uh, yeah, Bernie developed his own app to count votes. Rob says, I was shocked that MSDNC actually reported all the ties that Mayo Cheat had to Shadow In and the app. Well, it's a juicy story. They probably thought they could get some press out of it. Besides, they may not be for Mayo Pete any longer. They may be for Mayo Mike. And they may actually be looking to get Pete out of there and have his votes go to Mayo Mike. Kay says, hard to figure that the DNC would rather have the orange idiot than Bernie. I guess they didn't realize that would blow the whole Dem party up. Well, they never anticipate the bad things that can happen. They pushed us in previous years. They pushed us, again and again. And in the end, we take it. We squawk. We cause them trouble. We push back in various ways. But in the end, we still come back to the party, and vote for the party because of the party terrorism and because of, well, really, the alternative candidate. In other words, we know whoever they put up, he won't be as much of a holy terror as Donald Trump is, so they figure we're going to cave. Okay, they think they can push us to the wall, and every time we're going to cave. One of these times, though, we're not going to cave. They will have miscalculated. How do I know that? Because they always miscalculate. Always. Always. They are stupid. They didn't figure in that Bernie would have his own app to count. They probably did not figure that he would have 5 lawyers on hand for a meeting today. They probably don't really think about or calculate what the amount of money he's raised allows him to do. So, they're not looking at this as they should. Sandy says, if all this stuff is true about Pete and the Clintons, they should all go to jail for tampering with votes. Well, the ones who actually tampered with the votes are the state party people on the spot. Okay, we would have to prove, to put the others in jail, we would have to prove that their app was fraudulent and allowed them to electronically tamper with the actual results. Now, I suspect that the Shadow Inc. people are probably clever enough to be able to guard against other people finding evidence of that kind of thing happening. Steve Day says, precinct captains every precinct. Kay says, I agree, Sandy, but we both know that won't happen. Sandy says, I think Bernie had them and they were counting votes and keeping track of the votes with paper and pens the old fashioned way. Yeah, maybe so. And Steve Day says, Seth the Klarman, not much of a brainchild, says Sandy Day. Steve Day says, Peter's in it and gives a link to Facebook. I don't know what that story is, but maybe it'll be relevant to what we have to say here, so I'll open it up and see what we can get. Evelina says, somebody in Australian social media said, we knew they weren't going to make it easy, but this is downright sleazy. Well, of course, they were real sleazy in 2016. They were sleazy across the whole country in 2016. I mean, they lost 700,000 votes in California and 200,000 votes in Brooklyn to swing those areas to Clinton. Embarrassing. It's not embarrassing. It's infuriating and it's criminal. And they do belong in jail. And Kay says, Heartland's media is calling for 1 million yellow vests at the convention this time. Yeah, that would be great at the convention. 1 million yellow vests, okay, at the convention. And if they nominate somebody else other than Bernie, then those 1 million yellow vests should take unspecified action. Unspecified action. Was just an update on C-SPAN that Pete is ahead of Bernie. Ahead of Bernie in the popular vote or ahead of Bernie in the delegate vote? And Evelina says, hi, Dan. And Kay says, vests like in France. And Steve says, out Perez. And Susan says, why hasn't Bernie released all his results? Well, he may not have released them because he wants to use them as a check on what the Iowa party is going to say. He may want to save somebody. He may want to save some of them for the courts. Kay says, yes, I saw those so-called coin tosses. What a ripoff. Those are a GD joke. Two-headed coin. Evelina says, really, Russian rubles. Sandy says, Pete's ahead by 26.9 to 25.1. Yeah, I indicated that. That's a delegate count. Evelina says the coins, or actually, it's a delegate equivalent count. Lana says, I was watching Tina Berg live on Twitter last night. They weren't sent home. They left the room before they were supposed to. Well, I think they left the room before. I think they thought it was all over. They were led to believe it was all over. That's why the 100 people left the room. I think that Tina Berg and Fiorella stayed there for a longer time, but finally they had to go also. Sandy Dagan said it's 69% countered. Rick Maynard says evening all, and Steve Day says, yeah, Peter did a little backpedal. Yes, he did, because he started getting some comments about how he was lying and he was dishonest. And, of course, that's beginning to be more and more of a narrative, so he wants to try to counter that. Kay says, hey, Richard, good to see you. And Rick says February 11th. Susan says February 11th. That's probably in response to my asking when it is, or exactly on what day it is. Susan said they will cheat him anyway. They probably will cheat him, but the question is, will he take them to court, and what evidence does he have? In other words, what evidence does he have that they miscounted those votes? He seems to be ready to go to the mat now this time, with lawyers and with lawsuits. Susan says, I wonder how they will try to cheat Bernie in New Hampshire. I don't think it's going to be so easy in New Hampshire because I think the Burners are stronger in that state in official positions, okay, within the party. I think that's how Bernie was able to win it in 2016. Also, I don't think that in New Hampshire they were able to cheat him. Susan says, polls don't matter if they know how to cheat. That is true, if they have the means to cheat. But in New Hampshire, they may not have the means to cheat. We'll have to see. And Sandy says, oh, she corrected her earlier statement saying 62% of the precincts have been counted, not 69. Yeah, that was as of 5 p.m. today. Okay, and Evelina says, is Pete any better than Biden? I think Pete's worse. I mean, from what I've seen of Pete, okay, or heard of Pete, I just think Pete is a cold and ruthless guy. Okay, I don't think Biden is quite that bad. Evelina says, the boot butt cheating very hard, you mean? Susan says, lots of booty butt signs in New Hampshire. But the booty butt signs are probably paid in New Hampshire. He spent a lot of money there. Kay says, good news from Nevada. Glad to hear that. What's the good news from there? I see. Yeah, they're saying they're not going to use the app. Evelyn says, poor Iowans. Nicest bunch of people in Bernie's rallies there. Yeah, there were. Yeah, there were. But the nice people in Iowa evidently do not have control of the Democratic Party. Sandy says, I don't think Mike will get the women's vote. He said some horrible stuff to women that work for him, and a book of his nasty jokes and sayings. I agree. I also think that he's going to find it very tough to get very many blacks out to vote for him. I don't think, okay, that African Americans like Mayor Mike very well. Okay, says, if the nominee isn't Bernie, they lost my vote unless I can write him in. I also think that he's going to find it very tough. And Kay says, lawyers are involved now, so Bernie might be saving those, Kay, for evidence. Yes, he may be. And Steve says, I think the 30% remaining are in strong Bernie precincts. Why do you say that, Steve? Susan says, Pete's signs are plastic. I guess those are more expensive, right? Spent more money on those signs. Sandy says, I think you were right about Pete. Yeah, I'm afraid of Pete. I think he's a stinking son of a bitch. I really do. He's acted towards the African Americans in South Bend. He has acted very cruelly towards them, very cruelly, very discourteously, and just very oppressively in general. And Kay has joined. Okay. And Susan says plastic signs are not eco friendly. Ah, yes, of course. They are not. And they are more expensive, aren't they? Sandy says, Joe, do you think if Bernie doesn't become the Dem candidate, he will run, okay, as an independent? All I can say is I know he's given his word. But if I were him, with the strength of his campaign today, okay, and with all the cheating which the Democrats are subjecting him to, if they continue to do that, and he loses, if I were him, what I would do is to announce I am running as an independent. I'm running as an independent because when I said that I would support whoever the nominee K of the Democratic Party was, I naturally assumed that that nominee would be selected in a fair contest. I did not, at the time, I did not expect, and I was assured by them that in 2020 it would be a fair primary contest. They have broken those assurances. They've not fulfilled those conditions. Hence, I am under no obligation to support the candidate of the Democratic Party. I will not do that. I'm going to run as an independent. I'm taking my campaign with me. I am taking all my supporters with me who will go. We will run as a third party, and we will beat both Trump and the candidate of the Democratic Party. And you brought this on yourselves by cheating me and cheating my movement. It's not just me that you cheated. You cheated all the people who donated to me, all the people who worked for me, all their people placed their hopes in our movement. This movement was not me, it was us. And I have to act on behalf of us now. And that means that I have to run as an independent. That's what I would do. And now, Bernie is not me, but there are some similarities. He comes from New York. I come from New York. I come from the Bronx. He comes from Brooklyn. I have a Jewish background. He has a Jewish background. We both are highly secular. Highly secular. We both, well, we pretty much agree on policies. I may be a little to the left of Bernie, though I'm not entirely sure about that. I certainly don't have his talent for politics. I don't have his talent, okay, as an organizer. But our personalities are similar in certain ways. So maybe eventually he would do that. So Lana says, how would he get on all the ballots, though? Well, the Green Party in previous elections has been okay on most of the ballots, and maybe they would invite him again to run. Also, okay, I don't know how the Movement for a People's Party is doing. Whether they've been getting on ballots, okay, in many states. I hope they have, but I don't know if they have the resources to have done so successfully. I hope they have. I see my picture is frozen, my camera is working, and I am moving around. So on my screen, I look like I'm frozen. I don't know if I look that way to you. I may not. But okay, anyway, that's the way he'd be able to get on. He doesn't have to get on the ballots in all 50 states. He'd have a good chance to win if he can get on the ballots in probably the right 46 states. And Steve Gonzo has joined again, and Gary Houck has joined. They probably lost the feed, and they joined again. Well, are there any further questions or comments? Sandy says I look okay. Thanks. Thanks. It's just my screen that's frozen. Lana says not frozen. That's great. And I guess my sound's all right too, right? So, cool. Oops. Okay, any other comments or questions? If not, then I'm going to say good night. Okay, I wish you well. I hope things are looking better tomorrow. I'll be back for tomorrow's program. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you very much for staying. Please do share, share, share according to my screen. I don't have too many shares now, and I sure need a lot more of them. So please share as much as you can. Lana said, yes, I wanted to know about the Electoral College as a third party. I'm not sure what you mean, okay, but if you mean can a third party have electors? Well, as long as a party is on the ballot in a state, then if its candidate should win, then they can submit a slate of electors sufficient to cast the electoral votes that the party has won, or that the candidate has won, that their candidate has won. Now, the parties don't have official status in the Electoral College, okay, at all. Evelina says bye bye. Yeah, bye bye, Evelina. Kay says I shared. Thank you, Kay. Thank you for sharing. And again, good night, everybody. Thanks for coming.